And now we're going to finish our adjustment of the SPICA injection. In the case of this particular car, my thermostatic actuator was totally shot. It had no extension at all. And it needs to be about 5 millimeters in its natural ambient temperature state, and then extend beyond that. So my car did not start very well, though it always started. It did not like to start hot, and my spark plugs were absolutely black. So this all said everything was running too rich, but it ran surprisingly well considering. It would idle at about 100 RPM, the air compressor kick on, and it idled about 50. I mean, it wouldn't even show on the tach, but it would run. And that's the way these ejections are. They can be terribly out of adjustment and still run. They aren't going to work as well as if they're right. So I got a new TA, which I'll show you here, which is this mechanism here, and we've talked about it before. Coolant goes into a coolant chamber, and it has the tube and get down into the fuel injection pump itself. And at the bottom of that, of course, is where you have that 5 millimeter extension, which extends another 4 or 5. And we've talked about how much extension you have to have from the face of this. And I made a little homemade tool to aid in that process. And you can stick that down in the hole with the TA out, and that'll get you real close to where it's going to be with the engine warmed up. So that amount, about 29 millimeters. And so that simulates a TA in a warm state with the car warmed up. And all these measurements are made at about 175 degrees Fahrenheit when you do this adjustment of the gap. And again, the gap is right here, and this car is cold, so there's more of a gap than 19 thousandths. But warm, that should be 19 thousandths with this unhooked.
Let's do that again.
Now there's this gap down here, should be 19 thousandths. And this is a cold engine, so it's bigger than that. But that's where that gap is. And then when it's totally warmed up, you would hook this back on, and that 19 thousandths should remain. And you can adjust this link to help that happen. But it'll run fine with that being off quite a ways, but it won't run as well as it can. So what I've done is I've replaced my thermostatic actuator, and then I had to retune my richness, which is this device here, and we've already talked about that. Turning that clockwise leans out the fuel mixture. And I have a couple of homemade tools. This is a homemade tool that I made. I just made it out of a socket, and that fits on that lock nut down here, and I'll show you how that looks. Take the clip off, and that seat's right there, and you just turn it with the socket. Turn it left to unlock it, and if you're starting over, you have no idea how far out this is. You just unscrew it entirely, and then screw it in 10 full turns, and that'll be a good starting point. And then you just finesse it from that point.
What size of socket is this?
That's a 1 1/16.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the millimeter equivalent of that is. I just filed it so that it had the 4 notches. You could do it without that, but this is a nicer way than chiseling on that. third tool that helps this whole process is another homemade tool for loosening the distributor. Before you ever start, you want to be sure your distributor is in time. In other words, your ignition is in time. And this nut to loosen. So if you're on the 10 millimeter nut that tightens down the distributor, you can turn that left and loosen that, and then turn the distributor to get your precise ignition timing. Turn it counterclockwise and advancing. Turning it clockwise is retarding. So you want to be sure that stuff is right.
Let me see your tool real quick. So, what size is this?
That's 10 millimeter.
Okay.
For a 10 millimeter nut.
Okay.
So that's about it. We started with an engine that was running, but running way too rich. We found out the TA was totally shot. It had no extension at all, and would not extend any when it was warm. So it was going to be way too rich, and it was, but it ran relatively well. And then I put in the new TA. I had to do all my adjustments over. Now it starts instantly, idles at 10 to 1100 RPM consistently, with or without the air compressor. Has good power at all levels. And if I pull a plug and look at it, the plug is not black, it's gray. So everything is pretty well set. And so that's a quick bird's eye view of the SPICA injection and the sort of thing that an individual can do at home with very ordinary tools. And again, I cited some places to look to get further information. Wes Ingram and what was the other guy again? Hang on.
John Stewart
Yeah.
and Wes Ingram.
Yeah. And there are books. Hang on. Another individual you should be familiar with his writing is Pat Braden. Pat, unfortunately, is deceased now, but he has a couple of books, thick books like this, and if you're an Alfa Romeo person, you'll definitely want to have the book. He goes through in detail the SPICA injection, as well as talking about electronic fuel injection that's found in Alfas, and lots of material on Webers, and the Solexes and the other carburation, as well as about every aspect of owning an Alfa. So that's it. I'm Dave Stewart. My assistant is Greg Lockwood, and we're signing off. Thank you.